We're proud to welcome you to the Exceptional Advisor podcast series, brought to you by the Investments and Wealth Institute. The goal of this series is to help you better serve your clients, differentiate yourself from the competition, and enhance your ability to communicate those differences. The Institute is a professional association, advanced education provider, and standards body for financial advisors, investment consultants, financial planners, and wealth managers who embrace excellence and ethics. Through our events, continuing education courses, and acclaimed certifications, which include the Certified Investment Management Analyst, Certified Private Wealth Advisor, and Retirement Management Advisor certifications, we deliver Ivy League and practical education for investment and wealth professionals. Hi, I'm your host, Bob Powell. I serve as the editor of the Retirement Management Journal, which is published by the Investments and Wealth Institute. And I also serve as the editor of Retirement Daily, which is published by The Street. Today, my guests are Kirstin Hill, Managing Director and Strategic Performance Executive at Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, and Jen Auerbach, Head of Strategic Growth Markets for Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. So Kirstin and Jen, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you both on the line today.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks
Great.
for having me.
You're welcome. So before we get started, for the benefit of our listeners who may not be familiar with each of you and the work that you're doing at Merrill Lynch, would you both take a moment to just describe give us an overview of your CVs?
Sure, yeah. Let me start, and then Jen, I'll hand it to you. So Kirstin Hill, I'm the Strategic Performance Executive for Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. I've been in this role for right around 3 years now, and I think of it as really supporting Andy Fig, the president of Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, and our field team in the development and execution of our strategy as a wealth management organization. So that includes everything that, of course, Jen will tell you that she does in terms of our strategic growth markets work, where we have particular initiatives or opportunities to, drive national acquisition strategies or national client retention strategies, advisor compensation, advisor recognition, practice management, consulting and support for our advisor teams as they think about, driving their own practices forward. And then, of course, our training program that we call our FADP program, and building the advisor force of the future here. Jen, over to you.
Yeah. So Jen Auerbach, I am head of a team we refer to as Strategic Growth Markets, and I know we'll spend some time talking about what that actually means in detail. But at the highest level, the spirit of the team and the efforts that we put into place are really all about understanding and acknowledging, that the gender of wealth in our country looks very different from what it looked like, a couple of decades ago. And similarly, the complexion of wealth is changing at a rapid pace. And so in order to ensure that we are best positioned to serve the future of wealth in our country, we have this team that does a whole number of things across research, programming, both internal and external, and look forward to sharing more about that shortly.
Great. Thank you, Jen. So, Kirstin, let's start with you. I think here we are. We're at the start of 2020. Lots of changes we witnessed in 2019 in the wealth management industry. Can you give us a sense of where we are, where we've come from, and perhaps where we might be going?
Absolutely. Well, right. What a better time than at the beginning of a new decade, Bob, to be talking about this. And we really see that we are at an inflection point for the wealth management industry, but one that is pointing us to an absolute bull market for advice and for advisors and the role that they play. There's so many different things driving that, but if we were to call out just a few, of course, there's the extraordinary wealth transfer between generations that is and will be occurring. I mean, some sources put that at almost $70 trillion between generations over the next 25 years. The transformation of the financial power of women, controlling now, I think, $14 trillion of assets in the United States. And then, of course, just something we all live and feel every day, which is the complexity of issues in the world increasing at the same time that the pace of information that confronts us is increasing at quite an extraordinary rate. So all of that comes together, again, to kind of end where I started, to say there is a higher need now, I think, for advice, for insight, for thought leadership, and for the deep personal relationships and guidance that advisors can provide to clients than there ever has been before, in our view.
So in terms of where we're going, the opportunities for growth in the decade ahead, how do you see this playing out? Is it that on the one hand, advisors will have to become all that more sophisticated, or maybe just speak to sort of the opportunities that are there and how?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I mean, I think there's a number of things. One, I do think we have to continue to evolve the role we play in clients' lives, as advisors have over the decades already, and the industry is certainly in our, the incredible talent that we have has demonstrated the ability to do. But I think a big part of that, as we look forward, is going to be about ensuring we serve clients comprehensively, so that clients really now we see want a more comprehensive relationship that isn't simply investment management, but includes investment management, planning, banking, credit, all in one place. But fascinatingly, from our perspective, we actually see that demand for kind of one-stop shopping be all the more prevalent for millennials. I think 70% of whom say they're looking for banking and investment advice all in one place.
Just in a world where it's increasingly complex and information is coming at you fast, having multiple accounts just becomes all that much more difficult to juggle for millennials or the silent generation, right?
For anyone, really, for any of us who are busy. Right. I mean, speaking for somebody, who's kind of in the middle of it, in the sandwich generation, when you've got kids, when you've got aging parents, you have plenty of other information coming your way, and needing to sort through your own financial information and piece it together isn't necessarily top of the priority list. You're looking for help with that in terms of the time you spend. But look, at the same time, to support that, advisors therefore need to be thinking about and doing more for clients in terms of the breadth of the advice they're delivering. That makes it incumbent on firms to ensure we are doing more to deliver capacity to advisors and to their teams, so that they have the time to now spend on these new areas of advice, the time to be spending on the planning that people are looking for. And that's why, of course, we feel so lucky here to be benefiting from everything, inside of Merrill, but inside of the broader Bank of America, and, the technology and infrastructure spend that we're able to make as an organization to really be driving that efficiency, kind of both for clients and their experiences, and for advisors and their teams, and giving them that time back.
So when you talk about clients seeking breadth from their advisors, is there still a single entry point? Is it still revolve around retirement planning or college planning or other things that sort of drive someone to go seek the advice?
That's a fascinating question. No, I don't think there's a single entry point. I mean, we certainly still do see, of course, as people are, approaching retirement or in retirement, they both, have more assets on which they're looking for advice, and are reaching the point in time where that becomes all the more pressing for them to seek. But we also see that demand for advice, from, younger populations as well. And I think much like retirement, there are obviously life events that occur for people, if we put ourselves in the client's shoes, that cause people to be seeking for and appreciating the value of advice. I hope I'm not sharing anything Jen wouldn't want me to, but Jen is going to have a baby this year, which is incredibly exciting. And so it's moments like that, right, when you're getting married or you're having your first child, or as you see your own parents aging, that starts to cause you to think about, what does it mean to get my own financial house in order, and who are the experts I can turn to help me with that?
So one more follow-up question is in the old days, clients would tend to go to advisors for investment advice, but that seems like in this new day and age, investment advice, especially if we think about the advent of robo-advisors, is maybe sort of de minimis, and the other things that you talked about, banking, for instance, debt management, whatever it might be, becomes part of the breadth of services that make investment management no longer the value proposition perhaps that it once was or doesn't need to be?
Yeah, I mean, I might say it a little differently, though I understand what you're saying, which would be that it's necessary but not sufficient. I mean, of course, our clients, are seeking and expect from us kind of true institutional quality investment advice, and we believe we're in a better position to do that with anybody. We have an extraordinarily, high-rated research team, the best advisors in the business, in our view. At the same time, clients are saying, yes, and I also need you to guide me on how to financially plan through these critical moments in my life, how to understand how to think about managing or utilizing intelligently kind of debt. And when we think about, banking, it's yes, we have, the best banking franchise again, and best banking technology and so on. We believe in the street. But really what it also enables is the most effective advice, because now we can be helping you as well with advice on, and tools on things like spending and budgeting, the day-to-day blocking and tackling that really matters to everybody, no matter where you are in the wealth spectrum.
Mm. So can you talk a little bit more about how else client needs are being met in addition to what you've described already?
Sure, of course. I mean, look, I think one key element is thinking about teams and having advisors on teams today. We see almost 80% of our advisors being on teams. I would say, in the next decade, we'd expect that almost all of our advisors would likely be on a team. We think this is critical in terms of what clients expect, helping, them really succeed, ensuring that clients can understand that as they experience the wealth transfer through generations, that they can expect and benefit from continuity from their advisor team, through the generations as well. Of course, that also helps advisors succeed in their career and helps us grow. In terms of thinking about advisors succeeding in their career, one big area of focus for us, and I mentioned it up front in terms of the scope of the team, is really thinking about this concept of our training program. You hear a lot in the industry about an aging advisor population. What's interesting for us actually is that the age of our experienced advisors is only 50 years old, and the average age of our advisor trainee is 34. But having said that, we're still spending a lot of time thinking about how do we continue to grow our advisor force. We, I think, as an organization, have a long legacy of an outstanding training program that we are, as focused on today as we've ever been, thinking about hiring the right people, thinking about providing our advisor trainees with, the right base of knowledge, kind of balancing kind of core practical knowledge with really the people skills that we know and the client skills that we know are critical to really succeeding. But then also providing those people with support. We've made a significant investment recently, hired over 75 people in the field to support our trainees, kind of coaching our trainees, giving them the tools and resources, things like, LinkedIn Sales Navigator or Zoom Info Access, all the tools to really say what sets you up to have a successful long-term career as a Merrill Lynch financial advisor. Another thing I would say, and I know this will segment really nicely to so much of the work that Jen is doing, we're very focused on developing a diverse advisor force. We serve every segment of society today, and we all know that the advisor population of the future needs to better reflect the people in the communities we serve. And the great news is, as we look at our training program, we are seeing that come to life. So it's more diverse than it has ever been. Almost one third of our advisor trainees are women, and 1/3 of our advisor trainees are people of color. So we're definitely making progress. We have more to do, but we're excited about what we're seeing on the ground.
So if you think about the advisor population, how it's changing, what you're doing to address those changes, training, forming teams, diversity, what are some of the challenges that you're facing, and how are you sort of addressing those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the part of the challenge is it is different to grow today. What does it take for an advisor to grow and acquire clients is different than what it took, 20, 30, 40 years ago. In as much as the industry has changed, the regulatory environment has changed, the value proposition has changed, as we've been talking about. I mean, I think the good news and one of the big challenges that we have been confronting as an organization over the past several years, or really, the leadership of the firm kind of challenged us with several years ago, was to say we have to get our organic growth engine going again. That we and the industry had in many ways relied too much on kind of recruiting as a driver for growth rather than organic growth. And I think the good news is that we've really turned on that organic growth engine. We've added more than 35,000 net new households for the past several years. That is many, many multiples of what it was, just 3 years ago. More advisors had a record year this year than any time in history, but that is not an easy journey, for anybody involved, including our advisors. And I think when we think about challenges, one of the big things we've done to really help and support advisors as we turn on this growth engine is really create a peer-to-peer network. We have something here called the Advisor Growth Network. It's led by our advisors. It's made up with our highest growing, our most productive advisors. We have a national group there that really provides kind of peer-to-peer leadership, ideas, support, and connectivity to leadership. That's about kind of the culture and the practice of growth, from one advisor to another. And I think it's one of the things that really is so special about Merrill is that, in the face of the challenge of growth, what we see is the incredible leaders we have kind of on the ground in the field, stepping up to help one another, to share ideas with one another, and to kind of move everybody forward. It's been really exciting to see.
Right. And then obviously one last question about sort of the challenges. The industry has faced the possibility of advisors breaking away to form their own RIAs. And any thoughts about what you're doing to at least keep folks within the Merrill Lynch stable?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of what we just talked about. I think of it as, number one, the culture here, as we were just talking about, is really a very special one. It's a culture of excellence, it's a culture of family, it's a culture of kind of peer-to-peer connectivity, and that feeling of the people you've been alongside, the people who have pushed you forward and helped you, your peers or otherwise, or people across the country. I think it's unlike any other culture, and it's really at the heart of why we're all here, our advisors included. Another element is, what we are collectively able to deliver to clients, and what that means for advisors and their ability to deliver value to clients. Right? We talked about clients needing comprehensive or seeking more comprehensive advice and solutions. There's really nowhere better, I think, where you can deliver to every client everything they need in a best-in-class way than here, whether it's kind of an individual solution or, a small business, all the way up through kind of C-suite and corporate solutions. So for people who are really saying, I'm going to lean into that and deliver for clients what they need, there's nowhere better solution-wise to do that, I think. And the third thing I would say, and we touched on this early, is really our capacity to invest in technology. Technology that supports our people and making it easier for our advisors and their teams to deliver, but the technology to support our clients. And I think of that on multiple dimensions. It's both about, what is the ease, the insight, kind of the value of the experience of the technology for clients, but it's also about security. I mean, we are in a world where cybersecurity is top of mind for everyone. And I think there is, to be at a company where you'll hear our CEO say, there's a blank checkbook for, spending to act and defend on behalf of our clients. I mean, I think that's where you want to be if you're a client, and therefore, if you're an advisor, kind of concerned about that for clients.
Great. Okay. So, Jen, you've been silent, intentionally so, but I want to turn to you and talk a little bit more about, maybe describe a little bit more about your role and why was the Strategic Growth Markets team created?
Yeah. I mean, Kirstin brought up a number the business case points, the changing demographics of wealth in our country are real. $70 trillion in wealth transfer, bulk of which will be inherited by women and millennials. I mean, just a quick sidebar on millennials being a part of the cohort myself. One, it's not new news, but millennials are older than you think they are. And lots of my peers and candidly myself at one point, would generally describe myself as like a self-directed, kind of person. I do everything online, as do, most people who, in my age bracket. And yet when it comes to these big life moments, as Kirstin mentioned, having a baby or thinking about, responsibilities as it relates to aging parents. I mean, there is just a really important role that advice and guidance plays that can, it's really only as valuable as the person who it comes from. And so, being a financial institution, a wealth management firm that can provide, the spectrum of solutions, however and whenever clients want it, is incredibly powerful to me. And again, so it's not just about, a pre-retiree conversation or thinking about, planning for, a 529. It's really about, advice in all kind of shapes and sizes. So the other thing about millennials, just not to belabor the point too much, is that millennials are also the most diverse cohort, age demographic, whatever you'd like to call it, generation in American history, only to be trumped by the Gen Zers. And, 44% of millennials are diverse. There are incredible projected statistics around the fact that by the mid 2040s, again, in the near future, racial and ethnic minorities are going to make up over half of the American population. And so when we think about, what was the real business case, what was the real push, to have a dedicated team, dedicated roles to serving the future of wealth, I think all of those were really important inputs. And, it's not just the size of racial and ethnic minorities, in the country. It's the purchasing power, that they control and influence, the LGBTQ community. And this is I believe to be an underreported number at $1 trillion of purchasing power. The Black African American community to the tune of $1.3 trillion. And Hispanic Latino community representing, $1.5 trillion in purchasing power, and the growth of the affluent segments in each of these segments is also remarkable, outpacing the growth of affluent segments that we see in the general population. And so when we started this journey, put a lot of thought into even things like what were we going to call ourselves. Today, we're strategic growth markets, but I'll say that there were a number of other descriptors and names and titles that we were thinking about calling ourselves. Do we call ourselves diverse acquisition, affinity markets? And ultimately wanted to really ensure that the name of the group, the name of the effort really reflected how important and how weighty this initiative was, and that candidly it is a part of the broader strategic performance organization, a part of Kirstin's organization, as opposed to living underneath a traditional HR umbrella, for example, or even under a marketing umbrella. That it was truly part and parcel of delivering core business results. The story around women is, I think, the obvious place to start. Population representing more than half of people, but then also women today. And again, Kirstin mentioned this already, controlling $14 trillion of the personal wealth in the United States. It's a number that is greater than the combined GDPs of China and India. The story around women is, nothing short of incredible for a whole host of reasons across key dimensions like levels of education. Today, women out-earn men at every single level of education, all the way from their bachelor's degree to PhDs. Women are earning more money. I know that often headlines seem to be saturated with the pay gap But the reality is that women are earning ever more dollars. In fact, some of the more recent data starts to look at standardizing what women are making between the working ages of 21 and 65. When she has a white collar profession and is college educated, she actually looks like she's starting to out earn her spouse. Again, assuming holding a couple of these things constant, the data is actually quite promising. And then around women in entrepreneurship, I mean, just another incredible story that is only going to get more and more powerful and pronounced in the future. A third of all small businesses in the United States are owned by women. They generate an economic impact that's north of $3 trillion. And again, just to kind of compare that in size and scope to other countries, that would be, if it were to create a country, it would have the fifth largest GDP in the world. And again, that's just the businesses in our country that are owned by women. And so most of the past 2.5 years, the amount of time that we've been at this has really been focused on thinking about, how do we ensure that we're doing a better job with women? How do we ensure that, we are known for our investment solutions, but we're so much more than that. And how can we really bring to life, other topics that might at the surface level feel somewhat disconnected from one's finances, but the reality is that they're inextricably linked, and that we're a firm that understands that and we get it. And how can we demonstrate that we can be the place to solve one's asset allocation needs, along with all of the other things that go with it. And so we've been committed to a listen first approach. That listen first approach is kind of felt tangibly in the research that we commission, that we partner with a number of organizations on with, to ensure that we're asking the right questions. I think that there's so much value in questioning the questions that we ask, and ensuring that we're not making assumptions or presuming that we know what it is that women investors want from us. And so we took a meaningful amount of time to talk to women. Notably, we released a pretty significant body of research in partnership with AgeWave, an organization that we do a number of research pieces with. And we asked the question of women investors: are there fundamental differences in one's financial life journey in comparison to men that are meaningful and relevant? And what we heard loud and clear was that 70% of women investors said yes, they do believe that they live a fundamentally different financial life journey. And so that was important for us to know and hear. And so when we think about what grounds this work, this initiative, all of our efforts in something credible, it's grounded in responding directly to the voice of women investors. I mean, the other thing we heard, I'll just share, was this idea of there being barrier to the conversation around talking about money and finances. 61% of women said that they prefer to talk about the details of their own death rather than money. And to us, that was, quite a sort of eye-opening statistic to have come through. And it really, in many cases, sort of reinforced, again, this need to do more. And on the other hand, it also reminded us that the way in which we are trying to ignite a conversation thus far doesn't seem to be truly igniting that conversation. It's not really generating that spark that we need. And so we launched a number of initiatives kind of directly to respond to this idea of wanting to break the silence on the topic of money. I guess one of the best examples of us doing that is meeting women where they are, hosting a whole series of events in market, and not just the New York, LA markets, but really ensuring that we were in market and we were bringing thought leaders on a whole variety of topics to women investors directly, always kind of wrapping it in a conversation of how this connects to finances and money, but leading with things like health and wellness or impact or representation. And we've had the privilege of having a number of incredible speakers join us, thought leaders on a variety of these topics. Tiffany Dufu, she's a New York Times bestseller. She wrote the book, Drop the Ball, all about how does one achieve more by actually doing less. We had world-renowned cardiothoracic surgeon, Kathy Magliato, join us in one of our earliest events. We had Lisa Genova, who is the author of the book Still Alice, which was later made into a film for which Julianne Moore was recognized with the Emmy. And most recently, actually in DC, we had Gina Davis join us to talk about, not just the immense body of work that she has been a part of over a multi sort of decade career, but about the importance of representation of women in the media, and particularly what the representation of women through roles for children means for the way in which women grow up and see themselves and envision different career paths or futures for themselves. And, it's just been incredibly powerful to be a part of these events, and then more importantly, to see the kind of interaction, quite literally the buzz in the room during the networking sessions that is created kind of pre and post hearing the speakers on stage, for example. And so it's a step in the right direction. We're going to do a lot more on this front. But we are, really committed to this idea that change will start through igniting conversation.
So when you think about serving this diverse client base, is there, Kirstin, you mentioned training. I would take it that there's additional training that might be required in order to serve the client base like LGBT or Black or Hispanic or any of the other strategic growth markets that you're pursuing?
I think at some level, yes, of course, right? So there are certain populations where there are, legal differences that need to be considered in terms of your relationships. You talk about life events like having a baby that, depending on the type of relationship you're in, are going to be more complex. And if you're going to serve those populations, you need to be, up to speed and in tune with those differences. On the other hand, at the end of the day, to me, what our advisors do best is connect with people and giving good advice, no matter your demographic, no matter your gender, no matter your ethnicity. I think really it starts with, listening, understanding, the client's needs and goals and, desires and fears, and providing advice in that context. I mean, at the end of the day, what we all have in common is that we're human, and giving good financial advice that's really, tailored to us as people. But Jen, I don't know if you'd add something to that.
Yeah, I mean, the moment that I think about is started off on the journey to ensure that we were positioned to do a great job serving women investors, where we would necessarily ask the question, well, do all women clients need to be or want to be served by women advisors? And we asked that question too, and 90+% of women investors said that they were agnostic to the gender of their financial advisor, and that there were a whole laundry list of other much more meaningful and important attributes and characteristics of the advisor that were mission critical than being of the same gender. And I think that yes, there is always a wonderful feeling to feel seen and heard, particularly if there are experiences that are, could very well be different based on just how one is perceived in the world and moves throughout the world. And that the more important thing is, not to necessarily have shared in that exact same experience, but to simply, to Kirstin's point, to understand and to demonstrate empathy, and through asking the right questions and just taking the time to get it. All of those elements, I think, are incredibly important. We think about how do we describe, what it is that we offer our our clients and future clients.
So let me go back to earlier. We talked a little bit about teams and the need to create a team. In a world where it seems like there's a need for increased specialization, are you finding in the creation of the teams that someone on the team becomes a estate planning expert, someone an insurance expert, someone investment, someone retirement, and so on, or is it a case where everyone on the team is a generalist of some sort?
That's a great question. It's actually something we're spending a lot of time thinking about and are in the process of a significant investment and rollout this year, which is what we're calling our elite growth practice work. And there are a lot of parts of that, but it really starts with, number one, what's the client experience of the future and how do we deliver it? We talked about a lot of elements of that earlier in terms of being comprehensive. A lot of what we just talked about being personalized, tailored, feeling, how you want clients to feel, and of course, then also the digital and technological elements of it. But then there's also how do you design your team to deliver that to your clients and to grow as new clients? And a big part of that is to say, how can we deliver most efficiently as a team, and how are we helping people do that with tools, with resources, with roles and responsibilities. But roles and responsibilities and kind of those titles and ensuring we are supporting our team, our advisors in growing their teams with people with the right specialties, kind of with titles and the ability to bring people onto their team with titles that really make sense, to the role they play on your team. Things like, as you just said, wealth planners or relationship managers, or in the case of large teams, business managers for their team. And then really thinking about, are we as an organization and supporting those people by saying we really need to have some slightly more specialized support and ongoing training for the people who are wealth planners, versus perhaps the people who are business developers or relationship managers. So it's a huge focus for us. And I think definitely, particularly as teams grow in size and scale, we are absolutely seeing more of that specialization and looking to support our teams in doing it successfully and delivering successfully for clients.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground. Are there some things that we haven't talked about that you think our listeners would benefit from knowing?
Oh, that's a great question, Jen. I don't know if on your side there's anything you'd chime in with.
The only other thing I'd mention is that, in parallel to all the work that we do around clients, all the work that Kirstin mentioned, we also have, a concerted amount of effort to ensure that our women advisors, know that this is, like all advisors, the best place to be if you want to grow, and also the best place to be if you're a woman advisor, because again, we're a place that gets it. And so, having organizations, like, for example, our Women's Exchange Network. It is a 15-year-old organization, network of women across Merrill who, really it was founded as a grassroots effort, an idea in a downtown conference room here in New York that now boasts, over 6,000 members and has one of the, longest standing and as it's been described to be by many of the participants, one of the best mentorship programs. I think about Kirstin's point with the Advisor Growth Network and this idea of how important peer-to-peer learning and networking is. The Women's Exchange has been doing that for many years now. Every year they match over, I think it's close to 1,200 people through that mentorship program. And it's just a wonderful organization. I'm the executive sponsor for them. And I think that it's a really important signal and symbol of the kind of culture that we have. And then, the only other thing that I would mention is, just around this feeling of culture is the Women's Symposium that we host, and bringing together some of our top women advisors, not just kind of on the dimension of sort of, production, but across LOS, from across the United States. And, the spirit there is to really, celebrate what it means to, be a part of this great organization, to celebrate one another, to do things like, we call it growth groups, but you can think of them as, versions of the Advisor Growth Network or lean in circles, and, creating spaces for our women advisors to foster, with one another, to learn from one another. And it's just a great couple of days each year. And we think that it's a real symbol of what it means to be a part of this organization.
Oh yeah, well I can jump in on that. It was hard to describe the incredible feeling you had coming out of those several days, and I think every one of us who was there felt it. It was really, really an extraordinary experience. But Bob, just to answer your question, I don't know that I feel like there was anything we really missed so much. It's just I'd want to come back to where we started, which is as much as we talk about the pressures and the challenges around this industry, and of course they're real, I believe that there is no better time for advice for advisors than right now. Clients need us more than ever. They're seeking our advice more than ever. And yes, are we evolving to meet those changing demands? But we are absolutely in a position to be helping a lot of people. And I think that there's nothing more exciting than that.
Well said. So, Kirstin and Jen, I really want to thank you for being on the Exceptional Advisor podcast. With hope you'll come back on another time in the future and we can talk about other trends in the wealth management industry.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us. It was great to speak with you.
Thanks so much, Bob.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for listening to our podcast. My guests were Kirstin Hill, Managing Director and Strategic Performance Executive at Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, and Jen Auerbach, Head of Strategic Growth Markets for Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe through iTunes, Spotify, or our website at www.investmentsandwealth.org/podcast to get the latest episodes of our Exceptional Advisor podcast series. The Investments and Wealth Institute has been helping investment and wealth professionals become exceptional advisors for over 30 years. Please visit our website at investmentsandwealth.org to learn more about our certifications, conferences, online learning, and continuing education programs.